Hello my fellows, thanks so much for joining me for today's video. Today we're going to talk all about MAB Grow, what it is, why I use it, some plants that I grow in it, and some tips that might be helpful for those of you who are keen on trying out this substrate. And I'll also share my verdict at the end of the video, so make sure you watch till the end. But before we get started, if you're new around here, my name is Grace and I share my passion for growing houseplants on this channel. So if that's something you're interested in and if you like the vibe here, then definitely join the family, hit that subscribe button, and also don't forget to ring the notification bell so you get notified when I post a new video. And let's get into it. Alright, so what is MAB Grow? MAB is short for Mineral Aeration Blend, and this is a blend that is sold by Dr. Green Thumbs here in Australia, and it is a 100% mineral substrate. It's a porous growing media that is made up of a blend of Australian sourced minerals, and it is something that you can use in replacement of the traditional soil potting media. I believe it came about around the time pond became really popular in the United States, and it wasn't really readily available here in Australia just yet, so that was an alternative that is quite equivalent to pond. I've heard that pond is now available in the Australian market, and I'm actually really curious to see the difference between the two, so I might make a video about that in the future. But if you're interested, leave me a comment down below to let me know, so I'll definitely add that to my to film list. Alright, so why do I use MAB Grow? One of the main selling points for me is that it helps to prevent root rot no matter how much you water your plant, because it is airy enough that it doesn't suffocate the roots. And also because it replaces your traditional soil media, it completely gets rid of any fungus gnat problems. Both of these issues have been really problematic for me from the start of my plant journey, so when I heard about this substrate, I thought I would definitely give it a go. And after almost 2 years now of using MAB on some of my plants, I can confirm that I have not had any issues with root rot in my plants growing in this media, and also I haven't really noticed any fungus gnats anymore. Okay, so how do I use MAB? Personally, I like using it as a soil replacement and not so much in a semi-hydro setup. So what I did was I literally removed my plants from soil, cleaned out its roots, popped it into a new pot and filled it up with MAB Grow. I find that MAB Grow is quite heavy, so it does help to secure the plant in the position that you pot it in. So if you've got a really floppy plant, consider growing it in MAB Grow. I feel like it really secures the plant and helps to anchor it down. And I water my plants as I usually would with nutrient water, so I do a mix of HB 101, which is this guy here, and a little bit of GT Foliage Focus as well. Mix it into a liter of water, and I make sure to dilute it a lot so that I don't burn the roots of my plants when I water them. And yeah, just put it in a watering can and water them as I usually would. I find that they don't dry out too quickly in my environment because I do live in Sydney and it's generally more humid here. I also like to keep the humidity pretty high by grouping my plants together or keeping them in my grow tent in pretty mild temperatures to help retain moisture. But it's also worth noting here that the MAB Grow substrate is quite porous and holds onto moisture really well. So even if you underwater your plants or you don't get to them as quickly as you would usually, plants are generally pretty okay. I don't really notice the signs of dehydration quite as badly as if I forget to water a plant in soil. Alternatively, you can use it in a semi-hydro situation as an alternative to leca balls. And the benefit of that is you don't have to flush it every now and then to get rid of the mineral deposits like you do with leca balls. For me, because I use MAB Grow as I would just a traditional soil media, the water tends to run through anyway, so I never really find an issue with mineral deposits. So what plants do I grow in MAB? I primarily grow plants with really thick roots, such as aroids. So for example, I've got my Philodendron Florida Beauty growing in MAB, my Philodendron rugosum, my Aglaonema Pictum Tricolour, my Epipremnum Cebu Blue, as well as majority of my Anthuriums. I've also tried growing my Hoyas in MAB, but I think I only have one Hoya growing in MAB at the moment, and that's my Hoya Thomsonii. So I've had my linearis growing in MAB as well. I converted it over a year ago, and I no longer have my linearis, not because of MAB, but because it did get a really severe bout of mealybugs and I just couldn't save it. And so that just had to go. But I did learn a thing or two about growing Hoyas in MAB, and I will share that in a little bit. One of you have also asked for specific advice on how to grow Anthuriums in MAB. And I can see that you're growing it in an indoor greenhouse with 12 hours of full spectrum light, 2 fans, 80% humidity, and temperatures of 18 to 23 degrees Celsius. Treat it like soil, using it a watering can to water when it dries out, which is weekly, sounds like what I do. and recently have been multiple different Anthuriums getting yellow spots on leaves. Okay. Without seeing it firsthand, it does sound to me like it could be a little bit of a humidity issue that's causing condensation on the leaves. So in my previous experience growing Anthuriums in my grow tent with MAB Grow, and I still have a couple of my Anthuriums currently in my grow tent, I find that even with a fan going, sometimes humidity can sit on the leaves. If water just sits on an Anthurium leaf for too long a time without drying out, it does tend to lead to yellowing. And once it starts to yellow, it just sort of starts spreading across the entire leaf. So it sounds like that's something that's similar to your experience. From what I've gathered from the past, it's some sort of fungal issue on the Anthurium leaves because the leaves are a little bit more textured or like a little bit velvety. I do find that they're more susceptible to these issues, kind of like begonias. So maybe that's something to watch out for. You can reduce the humidity a little bit or remove the Anthuriums from the grow tent for a little bit until the yellow spots are under control and you can put it back in. So I hope that helps. Try that and let me know how it goes. So what's my verdict on this substrate? I actually really enjoy using this substrate for the reasons stated above, and I haven't really had too much issues with my plants that have converted into MAB Grow. But here are some things to keep in mind. This substrate can get quite heavy, so definitely keep that in mind if you are potting it into a bigger pot. And because of how heavy it can be, I find that rhizomes or plants that grow from bulbs don't really grow very well in this substrate because I think that the new growth struggle pushing through the substrate, so that's another thing to keep in mind. I have converted some of my Marantas into MAB Grow and I found that it hasn't really been growing very much for me. It's done really well in keeping the existing leaves intact, but it hasn't really pushed through with any new growth. So I'm considering converting that back into soil. And equally, I find that it doesn't really lend itself very well to plants with finer root systems like my Hoyas, for example, because the fine roots may have trouble growing against this heavy substrate. So that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps out the channel. And the next video will be a Hoya haul video, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay mellow, my fellows.